Hello, I'm Philippa Haynes.
And I'm Mark Lee. Welcome to our podcast.
So in the Accountant Success Secrets podcast, we showcase and celebrate successful accountants who are doing good things, have years of experience, and whose stories can inspire and encourage other accountants around the UK.
We've been talking to accountants who've been at the top of their game for several years and have some key learnings to share, including the highs, the lows, and some valuable stories that provide fundamental insights for listeners. And at the end of the day, we want you to see the person behind the accountant and giving them airtime and a platform to share their story.
Brilliant. So today it gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest, who is Claire Owen-Jones of Loud and Clear Accounting Limited. Claire is an AAT licensed accountant who started her business in 2015. So through a lot of trial and error, Claire has managed to pass the six-figure turnover, all whilst working 25 hours a week and remaining a one-man band. So welcome, Claire. Is there anything else you'd like to add in terms of an intro? What have I missed?
No, that feels like that's pretty much covered everything.
Great stuff.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, when Philippa and I were planning these podcasts, we always said we wanted to dig deep into the person behind the accountant. And we thought we'd focus on just 5 key questions, which we'll take in turn. Experience has shown that we ask supplementary questions and follow-ups as well. But let's start, Claire, with why did you go into accounting, and then why did you start your own practice?
So I was trying to think of it sort of an exciting story as to how I got into accountancy, but it's actually sort of incredibly dull. So growing up, like my family sort of, say very working class, kind of minimum wage sort of jobs, and I had one uncle, my uncle John, who always seemed to have a bit more money, nice cars, holiday, the kind of things when you're younger you think, oh, they're successful. So I was always like, I'm going to be like Uncle John when I'm older. And so from a very young age was determined to go into accountancy because that was my ticket to nice cars. And it kind of sort of went like that. But then when I hit A levels, got sort of quite bad depression, sort of, disconnected from study sort of a little bit. And I was always told that to be an accountant, you had to go to uni. So suddenly that was no longer an option for me. But I did connect quite a lot with my art during A level. So I actually ended up going to university and doing a fine art degree. Got a first, so was okay at that. Finished my degree, was looking for jobs, and my mum happened to see a local sort of bookkeeping job going up, and she was like, "Oh, Claire, you used to like accountancy, didn't you?" So applied for that job, got it, and was then introduced to the AAT. And obviously nobody told me that you didn't have to go to uni. So suddenly accountancy became an option again. Started doing the AAT probably about a year after I graduated, and went through and just became sort of a qualified accountant sort of that way. And I learned very quickly that actually Uncle John's wealth wasn't due to accountancy. It was due to his decision not to have children. So we're kind of there. It didn't quite play out as I expected it to. But yeah, so it was just I did it for the money and the cars. That was my reason for it.
And why not?
Speaking as another accountant who didn't go to university, my academic qualifications weren't strong enough for me to go. And then why did you start your own practice, and how did you start your own practice?
So it was never a goal of mine to do that. I think my reason was sort of quite a familiar story, as in I had my son. I then had to go back to work and was working part-time hours. My son had sort of bad reflux, and a couple of reasons he had to have a bit more appointments than normal. I had Graves' disease, sort of from the pregnancy and stuff. So I had a few sort of appointments as well. And I just kind of felt that, whenever you get an appointment for something, it was always on one of the days that I was working. And I felt that I was kind of letting the team down a little bit. I wasn't quite sort of as present as I wanted to be. And I sort of felt that my career had kind of ended at that point. And suddenly, I'd reached my sort of ceiling. So I left quite sort of spontaneously, had absolutely nothing lined up, was just sort of like, I'm off. And the goal really was just to get sort of some contracting work, just so I could still earn a bit of money doing accountancy to keep my sort of toe in with that, and earn some money and be able to work around appointments. So running an actual business, it came almost by accident. It was never sort of the original intention.
Yeah. And it sounds, I mean, we had a little chat off camera, didn't we? And there have been quite a few obstacles along the way. I mean, I normally ask this kind of moment, what have you learned? But I think really interesting are what are the sort of plates that you've been juggling in terms of, you've talked about kids and sort of being there and appointments and so what are the plates that you've been juggling in terms of those obstacles?
I mean, in terms of sort of business growth, it has been the restricted hours. So it has been sort of only been able to work, whilst my son was at nursery, and he only did a couple of days a week, and then building it up. So having an incredible sort of time restriction on what I could do. So that was kind of the main one. And the other one we were talking about is the fact that I am autistic as well. So I really struggle with uncertainty and things like that. So I like things that are very rigid. I know what's going to happen. I can plan my day. I live my life to an exact routine. I mean, if anyone's met me, you know that I wear the same thing over and over again. I've just got like one top in a small range of colours. Like if I have to change my jeans for some reason, the only thing I can think about that day is I've got different jeans on. It's like, I am very sort of rigid, and that's been something that's been a challenge for me as my business has grown, and you then got more clients and you've got emails and people asking you questions and stuff like that. So it started off probably more a time thing. I'm used to that now, and now it's just kind of managing myself really.
And how do you do that? Because I think there are a lot of conversations around neurodiversity, but they're almost as an aside. I'd like to sort of pull it in and say, so how do you actually deal with that on a day-to-day? What are your coping strategies? How have you managed to work with clients? How do you overcome that?
I think at the moment it's just kind of realizing what I can control. So, I start my day at the same time. My routine starts from the moment I wake up. If I get up a minute later than normal, then to me I'm late for everything. I can control my office. So it's just things like, I don't like having things behind me. So I can now have a plain white wall behind me and stuff like that. I can control my environment. I've got things like, I struggle with forms. So I've now got a VA, and her job is literally to go on a Zoom call and she'll go through Accountancy Manager with me and she fills out the forms. Because if you put a form in front of me, I'm just like, nah, I can't do that. So it's been sort of moving from being employed, where you are just a cog in a machine and you suddenly go, I'm just really good at this and everyone else does everything, to suddenly, as growing a business and suddenly going, actually, I'm really bad at this. Or emails can give me panic attacks. Emails, if I get too many, I'll just shut off and I can just walk away from them for a couple of days, which is obviously awful to do. It's just kind of recognizing and bringing in, my VA has been a really big help for me with that, and sort of, recognizing those bits is just kind of what I can control. And if I walk away from it a bit, actually that's okay. And that's just something I need to do.
It's really very inspiring the way you're speaking there, Claire, for other people who are neurodiverse and may think that they couldn't possibly run their own practice because of some of the challenges that you've just outlined. How did you go from contracting to building up a client base and achieving a decent turnover?
Well, I hate to say that it's probably actually a money thing again, which I'm just coming across really bad. But it was, so the goal originally was I just want some contracting work so I can earn about the same as I was in, when I was employed. And then you go, oh, I'm being paid an hourly rate, how can I up it a little bit? And you sort of maybe do a couple of extra hours, maybe, haggle a higher rate. And then I got to the point where I was earning the same, working part-time hours, but full-time employed. But having that hourly rate, I suddenly realised that half terms and stuff, when I wasn't working, I wasn't earning.
Yeah.
So it was more a case, okay, well, maybe I can just get a couple of clients of my own, just to kind of get, almost like a monthly retainer, if I can get them to pay me those bits. And then it was sort of, and then you get to the point where you're like, oh, I quite like doing a little bit less for a little bit more, because I'm becoming a bit more efficient at what I do. And it just kind of slowly sort of went. So I think I started my business in about 2015. I think it was about sort of 2018 was sort of the point where I was like, okay, I think I've got a business now. But it was very almost just sort of setting myself little challenges. I never thought I was going to be running my own business. I always had myself set up to fail at the beginning. It was just kind of, I'm just going to leave work on a whim. I've got no money coming in for the mortgage at the end of the month. Let's just ring around some contacts, see if I can get a bit of contracting work. Maybe I'll do this for 6 months, and then when personal life settles down again, I'll move back into employment. But it's just always been that kind of, but what if, could I earn a little bit more? Could I get, enough clients to cover my salary? Could I get, but it's just always just been like sort of small bits.
And where did, that's brilliant. Where did the clients come from? How did you get them?
Well, but I can't do face-to-face networking at all. I don't think I've ever left my office. But I discovered Facebook groups were my ideal thing. That was my social media of choice at the beginning, because I realized that once you spent a little bit of time finding a good group, because lots of them are people just DIYing or just after whatever, if you can find a good group, I just have to sit back and wait for someone to sort of pop up and go, oh, does anyone know how much I can claim per mile or something? And you just pop and you go, oh, it's 45 pence. And you're like, oh, thanks, Claire. And you just kind of just be really reactive. I never have to think about creating content. I can just kind of be there. And then I think it just got to the point of like, oh, Claire is really helpful. And then sort of just started writing blogs around those questions. So I could be like, oh yeah, 45 pence, but there's a few little quirks, go to this blog that I've written. And it just kind of did that. And then people just started to come to me, really. And that was actually the big jump in my income. I was sort of around about sort of the 30,000 kind of muddling. And then it clicked and I jumped to almost like 100 in about sort of 2 years or something like that, where it was just literally from about 2 Facebook groups, just answering questions.
And were those Facebook groups for asking accountants questions, or were they local groups or particular special interest?
Just sort of general sort of freelance groups. So I kind of joined them really just to be sort of a part of a network, but one where I could kind of control the interactions, so I could just log off or just sort of ignore them and stuff. So it was never a sort of marketing from a strategic point of view of this is what I'm going to do. It was just kind of, oh, actually, maybe I'm okay at just being helpful, rather than sort of trying to sell my services all the time. And it kind of sort of took off from there, really.
And I think just from what you've told us, you have been really helpful just in that sort of sitting back way, because as you've said, you've done a series of blogs, with all of the sort of key problems that people might meet and some of the issues, and you do that regularly. And you've even now got to a point where, you're actually talking to your clients if they are neurodiverse as well. You record little audio for them rather than, so you're doing lots of different things, aren't you? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I started off just writing blogs that were asking questions, and then I noticed when I was sort of going through my client portfolio that because I tend to specialise people in creative industries, primarily because of my fine art background, not that I necessarily connect with them more, but that I can kind of live my dreams through my clients. So if they're achieving great things creatively, I'm like, well, I'm part of the process, so I kind of am as well. That I suddenly noticed, okay, I've got quite a few clients with ADHD, quite a few who are dyslexic and autistic and stuff like that as well. And then once you do that, you start sort of going, okay, how am I communicating? So it started off just noticing with emails for my clients who are dyslexic. I now write one sentence per paragraph and try and keep my emails as short as I can so they don't get a big block of text. Then you bring in like Loom and stuff. So it's like, okay, well, they don't want to read about their accounts. I'll do a Loom thing so they can watch it instead. And then that sort of naturally went on with actually, how can I, could move that one step forward. So I started a podcast in July last year, and they're literally sort of 5-10 minute sort of episodes, and I break all of the questions down. So it would just be sort of, when do I tell HMRC that I'm self-employed? Like, how much money should I set aside for tax? Just really standard questions that we all answer on a daily basis, but just so that if I know that I've got a client who doesn't read, but that's not their preferred way, I can kind of go, here's a blog thing, you can read it or you can listen to it, so that they don't feel that I'm bombarding with information and then they go, oh, we can't ask Claire any more questions because we weren't able to read that. So yeah, it just kind of went from there.
Fantastic. Just before I ask the next question, it's obvious that you found your niche, and I talk a lot about niche, but with your fine art and working in creative, and being able to sort of live through them and speak the same language and have the same passion, that would obviously come out in your dealings with them as an accountant. So I love that. But talking now about, some of the mistakes that you've made along the way and learnings, I think, as you said, it was gradually you've done new things, but what has happened? Any mistakes? What have you learned from them?
I think a lot of the mistakes that I've made generally have been because I've never seen myself as a business, and things have happened by accident. So I run a lot of, probably like a lot of one-man bands as well. I run a lot of my business from my head and just memory. So I know all of my clients. I know what they do. I know when their deadlines are and stuff like that. So I probably stayed using an Excel spreadsheet for practice management for way too long. I think I had about 60, 70 clients on an Excel spreadsheet, which I could color code and stuff like that. And it was only when I started maybe missing a couple of things and gotten a little bit annoyed because I hadn't color coded them red, so I didn't notice or something like that, I was like, okay, maybe I should do Accountancy Manager instead. And then it becomes a really big job to put all of your clients on. And it happened to be a period when I was growing very quickly as well. So having to add a couple of clients a week when you had the backlog. So a lot of my mistakes have just been still thinking of myself as being, Claire with 3 clients giving it a go, and not actually recognizing that I've got a proper business and I need sort of proper systems, really. So most of my mistakes have just been me getting annoyed with it. Again, it's me not liking change. It takes a long time. My VA is trying to get me to stop using Adobe for my e-sign-in to use Accountancy Manager, and she just can't, because I'm just like, nah, this is my routine. It takes me a really long time, and then by the time I'll do it, and I will, because she'll take it off me and do it for me, it will then become part of my system, and I'll wonder why I didn't do it. But that's where a lot of my mistakes have been, just that kind of forever catching up with where my business actually is.
I think that's very honest and very common as well. You may not be aware of that. I don't even think it has anything to do with being neurodiverse. I think it has to do with things are working okay if we don't chat. I find this a lot with my one-to-one mentoring clients. One of the things they talk to me about is when should they start changing, doing things differently, and how do they make that change. And it's just very common amongst accountants, probably common generally. Nobody really likes change. How many clients do you have in your practice now, would you say, Claire?
According to Accountancy Manager, it's around 250. But I think, as a previous guest of yours said, that they count a director and a limited company as sort of 2 separate ones. So it's probably around sort of the 150 mark. Which, I will say, as someone who, it is just me. I don't outsource anything, so it is me dealing with these 150 clients. That because I work with freelancers, they are on the I hate to say on the lower end, it sounds like I'm sort of dismissing them, but it could just be that they speak to me once a year for a tax return or a couple of things like that. So I'm not dealing with 150 high value clients. Although I will add that if you are going to go for the strategy of having lots of smaller clients and you choose the creative industry, a global pandemic isn't the best. Don't do that, because then you have 150 clients contact you the second Boris Johnson stops talking, because their income's dried up. So that was a moment I questioned my niche, but generally that's how I have the higher sort of numbers, because they're on the smaller end.
Hopefully that's not going to happen again, but lesson learned, I'm sure. What would you say singles your practice out today from other sole practitioners when it comes to prospective clients choosing your coaching lead rather than other clients?
I think sort of day to day, there's probably not much. I think the fact that I know all of my clients, the fact that they know it's always me. So if something goes wrong, I can't blame anyone else. All of those kind of bits. I think it's very common for a lot of small one-man bands, sort of like sort of myself. I suppose the one thing that has changed, I was speaking to you about earlier, is if a client comes to me and they say, "Oh, I've got ADHD," or one of sort of the other bits, or autistic, like sort of myself, I am able to go, "Oh, I've got a few clients like that. How does that sort of come out with you? Is it this? Is it this?" And sometimes that sort of really helps as well. So I think sometimes
it's that affinity and rapport that you're able to build because of some common factor between you, I suppose.
Yeah, so I mean, occasionally with the creative industry, that we can start talking about sort of, if they do sort of artwork, then I can sort of talk to them a little bit more about that in terms of sort of copywriting and stuff. Up until quite recently, for the past couple of years, I've been a member of like the Pro Copywriter Society and go to their sort of conferences and that kind of stuff. So sometimes it can be sort of a connection through that. So I think there's a couple of little things. But I think as a whole, I think I'm pretty typical of the type of business that I am, really.
So I would say you're absolutely atypical, because actually the kind of the baseline is that you do your accounting duties, but actually on top of that, you are working with neurodiversity, and you're also very much into the art side and working with creatives and kind of know their business and do copywriting and stuff. So actually, from my perspective, that is an amazing story that you have behind you.
And Claire, you mentioned earlier that you manage your practice around childcare responsibilities. I don't know if your wife works as well, but I think you say you stop in order to collect your son from school. How do clients respond or react to that?
I mean, at the beginning, I fell into the trap that most new businesses do, in that sort of, I'll kind of ignore it and I will respond to you evenings and weekends, and the business fills up every available kind of time. But I think as I've grown in confidence and I've got more clients, and I maybe don't need, if I get a new client now, I'm not desperate for the new client. I'm able to kind of go, am I the right fit for you? Are you the right fit for me? And we've got that kind of stuff. That I just sort of naturally, when we do like the first call, I now have a moment which I refer to as my anti-sell bit. So we'll do all like, oh, I can do this, this is how I do it. And I go, and just so you know, these are the hours I work. So if you want someone you can speak to at 6 o'clock, I'm not the right one for you. If you need something like this, I'm not the right one for you. And I go through all of that kind of stuff now. So most people are, weeded out from that point. And if, sometimes I've had it where clients contact me and they've said, we've all gone all fine, and then after a bit of working together, they're always asking for evening appointments. I'm quite good at going, look, I just don't think we're the right fit. Can I recommend you to someone who knows who's done that? So I've kind of, I've become a lot better at being upfront about my hours a lot sooner. So most of my clients now, well, all of them are absolutely sort of fine with it.
So you have a no list like Lorraine had a no list, Mark. Do you remember?
Yes.
She devised a no list, which she said was really, really empowering for her. Lorraine Ellison, that was. What do you think? You know, if we could ask what the secret of your success is, and I think, you know, you've alluded to various pieces along the conversation. What would you say it are the secrets?
I don't know. I mean, I think one thing having an art background is that whenever you're doing sort of creative stuff, failure is part of that process. So I'm not, especially around marketing, I'm not scared of failure. I haven't got a brand. Nobody not like I ever would, but I could put something out really racist and like it would maybe cause a stir for a couple of days, but then no one would be like, oh, well, that's really damaged loud and clear accounting, because nobody's heard of me. So obviously I wouldn't go that far, but like I can give a podcast a go. I can give blogging a go, writing a go. I can give all of that kind of stuff a go, which I think sometimes can give me a little bit of a head start on certain sort of things. And other times, sometimes it is that whether it's personality, whether it is autism, I can go very deep into things. And so with blogging is sort of one example. I'll get really, really interested in it and I'll try different ways and different formats and different publishing times and all of that kind of stuff. I can get sidetracked. I know, sort of, especially early on in my career, I remember once seeing a social media post and they were at the ICB, like the Luca Awards. I'm never quite sure if that's the correct way of pronouncing it. I'm Estonian. And I was like, I want one of those. And I was like, oh, I'm not a member of the ICB. So it's like, well, I'm going to have to become a member of the ICB then. So I went through all the references. I did a couple of the exams. I got that. I knew the criteria. I did that for a couple of years, for about a year. Won the Luca Award for new bookkeeping practice, and then left. So I was like, I don't need it anymore. So there can be some things where I can be a bit more hyper focused, and I think sometimes just not scared of failure because I recognise I'm too small, no one's going to notice. And I think sometimes those two things can give me an advantage. They can hold me back as well sometimes, but yeah, I'd probably say those two things.
That's absolutely wonderful. And for anybody who's unaware, the ICB is the Institute of Certified Bookkeepers, and this is a book, nothing to do with bookkeepers, called Content Fortress, that is very, very well explains this principle of creating content or having conversations that make clear who isn't the right client for you in order to push the wrong people away whilst attracting the right people.
And once you start saying no to people, it becomes quite addictive as well. It's like there's a real sort of power thing, in terms of just having a meeting with someone going, I just don't like your vibe. And then like knowing that you don't have to work with them. I think probably like a lot of people when you've grown your business, you've had meetings with people and you're like, there's just something about you that I don't like, or you're asking me to do something I'm unsure of, and you take them on as a client, and you're then working with someone, like when their name pops up on the emails and you're just like, oh no, it's them again, or oh, they're making me work Friday evening and I hate doing that because I should be with my son doing something else. And I think it is through marketing. So I've read that book as well. I think it's really good books. It's one that I would recommend as well. So just kind of it naturally helps you to sort of narrow stuff down.
That's wonderful and great advice you shared there as well. Very much in line with what I tell my clients and help them to extricate themselves from those clients that their guts told them they shouldn't have taken on in the first place. But of course, people a little desperate at the start end up with a load of these clients.
Yeah, and I was going to say one thing on like a really random aside, just kind of throw in another mistake that I made, which I sort of forgot about, is that I niched really quickly, but in a completely different niche. So my background in terms of accountancy is actually dental accounting.
Oh, right.
And that was what I was trained to do in my previous job. So when I first went into contracting and started my own business, I was like, I know everything there is to know about dentists. I will niche in dental. And so that was what all of my marketing was. I'd done all the research I was doing, like all accountants, I did all the courses, read all the books, and I was like, I'm going to go hard into sort of dental stuff, and realised very quickly that employee Claire loves working with dental, but business owner Claire doesn't. And I sort of, I think I was probably one of the first bookkeepers in Wales to use Xero. And so at that point, if you'd gone on Xero, it would have just literally been me. And I had people contacting me going, we know you work with dentists, but we really want to work with you. And I was like, no, I'm dentists all the way. And I missed so many. I could have really jumped on that Xero train at the beginning, because I would have had it all to myself. But, so I think it is sometimes it is just kind of going, okay, well, I need someone who can cope with school hours. I need someone who is happy to just have with one person, or, those kind of things. So I came to my niche, even though when I talk now, I think it's quite obvious working with creators with my background. It's actually something that probably took me about 4 years to come to. And then when I felt comfortable and I was like, actually, I found my people, that was when I felt comfortable then turning people away.
That is the really important bit, which I'd love to go into in a lot more detail, but we've sort of come to our kind of 30-minute end. But really, that last statement, the power of niching, and sometimes it's the absolute obvious, which you've taken 4 years to find, which is your passion and which makes it work for you. But it's been lovely to talk to you, and we'd like to share with everybody how they can get in touch with you if they're inspired, and I'm sure they will be from this chat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to log into LinkedIn more. So if they were to sort of search for me on LinkedIn, I'd be there. Just finally deleted Twitter. So it is just mainly sort of LinkedIn, or you've got my website, which is just loudandclearaccounting.co.uk if anyone wants to contact me that way.
Lovely, thank you. And it's Claire Owen-Jones. And Philippa, how can listeners find out more about you and Insight 101?
I think the best is to go on LinkedIn as well, Philippa Haynes profile, or my website, which is insight101.co.uk. And Mark, finally, for you.
Yeah, well, I'm Bookmark Lee on LinkedIn, and I'm Bookmark Lee everywhere. Even my business card is a bookmark because my name is so common. My website, bookmarklee.co.uk, and there's links there to the Soul Practice Club as well.
Great stuff. Well, that's it. If you enjoyed the Accountant Success Secrets podcast, please share the love online, and let us have your feedback, obviously. And we hope to see you again next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Claire, for sharing your time and stories with us today. Absolutely fascinating. Some great tips and advice there for listeners, and Philippa as well. Thank you for co-hosting. I'm sorry if anybody's heard we had some noise problems, different to ones we've had in the past. We'll try and get them sorted next time. But until then, goodbye, everyone, from Philippa and myself on the Accountant Success Secrets podcast. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. Right, let me just